Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick, and today we're going to be looking at rendering in VR in Envisioneer. This is a muted webinar, so everyone will be muted. So if you do have any questions at any point during the presentation, please go ahead and type those into the questions area. And at the conclusion of the class, I'll go through and answer any questions that have come up. So like I said, today we're going to be looking at rendering in VR. So the first things we're going to talk about are rendering a scene in Envisioneer, adjusting the material properties, adjusting the lighting, editing the rendering settings, going through the rendering process, generating your VR views, and then uploading a panoramic view to your mobile device. So to go over a quick lesson overview of what we're going to cover today. So rendering a scene creates a photorealistic picture that enables a client to truly visualize their final home. Renderings are excellent marketing tools that can be used on your website, in brochures, or for client presentations. Getting a good result, however, can require a bit of prep work, as well as an understanding of how rendering works and the factors that are involved in the rendering process. VR gives the realistic wow factor when representing a space. There are various tools that allow you to navigate through a space while designing or send a client a takeaway of their space to view on their own mobile device. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the material properties. So elements in your drawing have materials applied to their surfaces by default. Every material has a finished properties that determines how much that material reflects, emits, and absorbs light. These factors can affect the lighting in a rendered scene. So to do this, we're going to be in our 3D view, and if I click on this 3D Materials Paintbrush button here, the catalog on the right-hand side will populate with all the different types of materials in the catalog. And I'm going to scroll down into the Groups pane. I'm going to select the Bricks category, and then I'm just going to select the Brick 1 material. And I'm going to right-click and say Edit Material. And this will bring up the Materials Properties dialog box. In this dialog box, you can control the type of texture that you're going to be using, or you can specify a color. We can also apply a bump map to our textures now. So if you wanted to add in a texture map that is basically the inverse image of the texture you're using, it will create kind of like a bump map. So it'll have depressions and projections that are rendered when you actually create the rendered image. And most of the materials in Envisioneer already have this assigned to it, but if you're creating your own, you would create an inverse image of that. Next, I want to talk about emissive. So this is the amount of light given off by a material. The more emissive a material is, the more self-luminous it appears. This is usually set to 0 unless it is a light source. So you can see here that ours is set to 0. Opacity is how opaque the object is. So if you have this completely set to 100%, you're not going to be able to see through the object. If you have it adjusted down to 0, you'll be able to see all the way through the object. So that is what transparent or the opacity does. Specular is the reflection that creates highlights on materials, making them appear shiny. You want to be careful not to make a material too shiny or it can overpower a scene. 15% or less will give a nice shine without taking over your scene. And again, depending on the element or the material you're applying it to, you can adjust this option here. And then we have a reflection option as well. And when you click on the reflection option, it will allow you to, and you can use the help button here to also bring up the help for what an element is or what you're working with. So if we look up the reflection option, this refers to, and you can see here, the amount of light that's being reflected or thrown back off of that surface. So again, you can adjust the properties of this, and you can check out the help menu at any time in the program to see what something does. I'm just going to click close on that. And then we're going to say OK to this, and we're not going to make any adjustments to that. Next, we're going to talk about lighting. So direct light and ambient light levels define the light that is reflected. Direct light is light that is emitted from your light fixtures. It has a specific color, intensity, and direction. Ambient light can be thought of as general level of light that is everywhere in the scene. Every light in the scene contributes to the overall ambient light in the scene. If you are rendering an interior view, you need to consider the light sources in your model. Although light coming in through windows is taken into account during the calculation, you may want to insert interior light fixtures to provide additional light to your scene. So inserting lights, you can insert a variety of light fixtures in your design with the point and click simplicity within Envisioneer. So if you go to Insert and go to Interiors and Interior Lighting, you can specify the type of light that you want to drop in. And then with the click of a button, you can place a light anywhere within your scene. In my catalog panel, I'm just going to click on the two-blade single fan with lights. And that's going to bring up the properties for that element. And in the interior lighting dialog box, we can select the Lights tab. The light source for this fixture is a 13-watt fluorescent pendant mount light. If you want to select a different light bulb for the fixture, you can click the Edit button, and this will bring up a list of different light sources that you can apply to this particular light. If you find after rendering that a room is too bright, you can try a bulb with a different wattage. And if you don't like the path of the light, you can select a bulb from a different group in the light source library. So right now we are specifying that we're using a ceiling pendant mount light. And a ceiling pendant mount light will create light that shines down as well as light that goes up from the light source. You're going to see light that goes down and then light that also goes up. So we'll have a bit of a glow on the ceiling as well. If you wanted this to be just completely set so that the light only shines down, you can use a recess mount light, and that way the light is only pointing in the down direction. Chandelier and pendant lights will be very similar in how they cast lights. A pendant light will be, most of the focus will be down, and a smaller portion will be pointing up, whereas a chandelier, it'll be pretty much equal. You'll have about the same amount of this distribution of light up and down. And if you actually double click on the element itself, you can see that it's actually using an IES file, and you can load in your own IES files if you can find them online, or if you have a manufacturer that's sending you them, you can use those, and it's going to specify the color as well. I'm just going to say cancel and cancel. And still under the lights dialog, the light position allows you to customize where the light source is in relation to the light and where it's coming from in relation to the fixture. In the preview picture of the fixture, you'll notice a red block being displayed. This red block represents the light source, and you can move this in the X, Y, and Z values. So that's what this option here is for. You can also tilt the light at an angle for a specific placement of the light itself. So if you wanted this to be pointing in a different direction, you can adjust the light orientation. We're just going to click cancel on here. To exit out of our editing of our lights. Next, we want to talk about rendering settings. So there are two different groups of settings that are taken into account when a scene is being rendered. Your global settings determine your location in the world and time of day. This will determine where the sun is sitting on the horizon and therefore how much daylight will be in the scene. There are also various 3D real view settings that determine what the rendering results will be. So in our 3D view, we're going to go up to View, and we're going to select Render 3D Real View. In the 3D Real View dialog, we're going to click on the Options button. And in the Object button, we have options. We have the global option, which will allow you to specify where in the world you are and where you want your north arrow to be set. And you can adjust this, again, to match your location. We're going to click Cancel here. I'm going to click Close on here. And if we actually right-click in our scene, we can bring up our scene properties. And in our scene properties, we can specify the actual time of day and date of the year that we're actually going to be rendering this at. So you can adjust the date and the time to suit when you want this to be created. And we can also specify our backgrounds. So right now we're using what we call a skybox. And the skybox is a generated image that when folded up creates a box. So that's why the black is here. It's just basically being omitted. So this is going to fold here, 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 and here, and it's going to create an actual cube. And that's what we're seeing when we navigate around. We're seeing this actual cube. And it's completely seamless, and it just allows us to create a cubed image that we're placing our little house inside of. We also allow you to add in just an image. So if you have a site that you're actually adding this house onto, and you know exactly what you want in the background, you can change the type from a 3D image to a 2D image, and then you can select the actual background that you want to use. So here you would create the image of your background, and we're going to say we want to use like a sunset, and we say okay. Now we're going to see just that sunset image in the background. So if I'm working in the city and I want to see a city backdrop in here, I would create an actual backdrop image showing the city skyline, and then I can use that as my backdrop. Another option that I use quite frequently for my exterior rendering is the Use Physically Accurate Daylight option. When I click on this, we're going to be able to control the exposure of the scene. So it's going to be creating a blue background for us based on our time of day, and we can control our exposure. So the higher I go, the brighter that scene will get. And then I can also specify my sun and sky settings. So down here, I'm saying it's a clear sky, so it's going to be nice and crisp. Or I can say I want it to be partly cloudy, and that'll kind of add a bit of a darker hue to the blue. And then I can also specify a custom option, and I can actually create my own sky power, sky saturation, and sun power to adjust how I want that to look. So again, depending on how you want that background to be adjusted, you can specify your own settings here. And I'm just going to leave it at clear sky. And we'll leave our exposure at 1. And then once you're finished, you can click Close. And that takes into consideration all the settings we just adjusted. So now if I go back up to View and Edit 3D Real View, we can look at our actual settings that we're going to be adjusting. So here we can kind of pan out, so we can walk back a little bit so we can see a little bit more of our view here. If we go back to options, we're going to be looking at our levels. So the level of quality in the resulting 3D Real View image, that is going to be controlled here. So there are 5 levels to choose from. You can note that the higher level is the highest quality, and it will also be the slowest rendering time. So the higher the level, the longer it's going to take to render because it's doing a more thorough evaluation of your scene. So if you're just doing a quick render just to see how it's going to look, I always recommend starting off at the lowest setting and starting from there. Anti-aliasing, this actually blends the pixels in areas where two colors or two materials meet to reduce the artifacts or the stair-step effect that you'd see, and it produces a more natural look to your scene. So as an example, if we look up here at our ridge line, it's kind of hard to tell, but when anti-aliasing is set to 1, you're going to see kind of a stair effect. So the line is kind of broken up, it's kind of choppy. When I bump up the anti-aliasing and I render this, this line becomes a lot smoother and crisp. So you're not going to see that stair effect. Again, if I'm doing just a quick render to get an idea of how the light affects the scene or how it's going to look, I just leave these settings at 1 and 1 and render it quickly. These noise reduction options, so when you create your render, you're going to be able to see in some areas a grainy effect. And you can use these noise reduction options to help eliminate the blotchiness or the grainy effect in your actual rendered image. So again, do this at a lower level first to get the adjustments that you want, and then you can adjust these settings and adjust your level of quality to be higher, so that way when you're going to create your final render, you're going to get the actual image that you want. The tree and billboard intensity, this is the brightness and contrast of the trees and photo boards in your rendered scene. So again, you can adjust this value according to how the render looks, and that's why I say you always start with a lower level first so you get an idea of how it's going to look. We're going to say apply and then OK. And then all we have to do is click on start render. So while this is rendering, so the program can take anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes to calculate the solution, depending on the number and complexity of the elements in your drawing and the level of the ray trace quality chosen. You can stop the solution if needed and then start again if you're seeing something that you're not liking. This is a quick time-saving note for you. You can save time by saving copies of your model and removing any extra elements that will not be visible in your rendered view. So, for example, if you will be doing an exterior rendering, you can gut the interior of the house. If you will be doing a rendering of the kitchen, you can eliminate everything in the model except for the rooms adjacent to the kitchen, and any landscaping that will be visible through your windows. When Envisioneer renders an image, it looks at every element and how light will reflect off of it based on the material settings. Extra elements in your drawing means extra time needed to perform your lighting calculations and larger file sizes. Over here, we can see that it's doing its ray tracing, so it's going through and calculating everything. Down here, we have three options: brightness, burn, and gamma. The brightness option, this is the overall brightness of the image. The lower values darken the image, while the higher values make it brighter. You can adjust this value during or after rendering. It must be adjusted prior to selecting the save option. Burn is a parameter that controls the intensity of the highlighted areas. This can be in a decimal value between 0 and 1. Lower burn values will decrease the intensity of the highlights to avoid a burned out area in the image. You can adjust this value during or after rendering, and it must be adjusted prior to selecting the save option. And then once the rendering is actually done, we have a convert to grayscale. So this saves the rendered image as a monochromatic image with varying shades of gray. We also have a save and a reset option. So once the rendering is complete, we can click the save button, and the rendered image can be saved as a bitmap, a JPEG, or a TGA file format. You will also be prompted to specify a file name and a save location for where you want that file to go. And the reset option, this resets the view in the preview window back to the pre-rendered state. So if you're not happy with how it turned out, you can click reset and adjust the variables again to create a new rendering. And gamma is, I just want to make sure that I'm specifying this one right. Gamma is adjusting the brightness of the overall image itself. So if you have some darker areas in the image, the higher you make this value, those brighter those darker areas will be. So if we were to adjust any of these settings, so if I click on the brightness, we can see that it brightens the overall image. We can lower it down so it creates a little less of a washed out feel. We can adjust the gamma, so we have these darker areas in here. We can actually bump up the gamma, and you can see that it takes away the darkness in those areas as well. And then again, once you're done and you're happy with it, you can click save and save. And it'll ask you to specify where you want that to go. And I'm just going to save this right to my desktop. And I'll say save. And once you're finished with your rendering and you've created your image, you can click close, and that will close down the 3D Real View option. Next, we're going to look at the presentation or virtual reality mode. So in a presentation mode, you can navigate using an external controller, such as a video game controller or the arrow keys on your keyboard. If you have a virtual reality headset, you can create a 360-degree virtual reality viewing experience. When navigating in your presentation mode, you will not walk through walls or other objects. Instead, you can walk up and down stairs, step onto decks, and walk through open doors just as you would in real life. To enter the presentation mode, you can select the view and select presentation mode, and it will bring up an actual view for you. And again, if you have a virtual reality headset connected, which I do not, this button here will become available to select, and it will allow you to pick on it, and you can actually view this in your virtual reality headsets. To turn global illumination on or off, you can click on the global illumination button. Global illumination is a process that adds more realistic lighting to a 3D scene. Reflections, refractions, and shadows are examples of good illumination. This feature becomes available after you have generated the global illumination cache, which is the next option we're going to look at. To generate the global illumination cache, you would click on the global illumination cache button. This pre-calculates the lights, shadows, and reflections for the model so that you can navigate more smoothly while in your virtual reality mode. Once the global illumination cache has been generated, you can turn global illumination on and off. And then to exit the presentation mode, you can click on the close button. Again, if I wanted to navigate in here, I can use my arrow key, and I can walk around using my arrow key. And yes, I can walk on the water right now because it's just a surface. So it's just going to find the next step, and it's going to allow me to walk through, and then I can walk through open doors into my design. And we can walk into the house like so. Again, if you have an Xbox controller, you can actually use the controller to walk around in this scene as well. And then once we're finished, we just simply click on the close button, and that will bring us back into our Envisioneer model. And the next thing we want to talk about is generating a panoramic view. So in Envisioneer, you can create a panoramic view to export to the Home View VR smartphone app. This is a great way to share your work with your clients, friends, and family. You want to make sure that you're in a 3D view, and then you're going to go up to View, and you can select the Render Panoramic View. This will then generate a panoramic view. So if I click on this option, and what this allows us to do is it creates a cube map, again, of our actual scene. Again, you can adjust the actual options of how you want this to be rendered. So same as rendering a normal 3D view, you set up the quality level that you want. And when you have that set up, you say OK. The first step is calculating the global illumination. So this again will calculate the global illumination of that scene, and you will see a render complete message below the button once the calculation has finished. And if I just start that, it will calculate that for us. Once that calculation is complete, you can then adjust the controls in the image processing pane of the Generate Panoramic View, which again is going to be your brightness, your burn, and your gamma. So again, you're able to control the image processing of the view that you're rendering. When you have finished adjusting those controls, you can then select the step 2, which generates the actual faces. So this will render all 6 faces of the cube that make up the panoramic view environment. During this process, you're able to move around in the preview window to see the different faces that are being generated. To do so, all you have to do is left-click your mouse and you can move it around. So once this goes through and generates that first step, we can see how this is going to look. So if I'm happy with that, I click on Generate Faces. And now it's going to turn it into a cube map, and we're going to see a bunch of numbers. So right now we have 1, and then we have 2, there's our 3, 4, and I believe 5 is at the top, and 6. So it's going to calculate and it's going to render all of these for us and create an actual cube map. And then from that cube map, we're going to be able to create a scene that we can send to our clients. So once all 6 faces have been generated, you will then be able to upload that to the HomeView VR site. And to upload your project, you just select that button. So this will take a while, so I'm just going to cancel that, and then I'll describe it to you. So once that's complete, you'll get a Generate Panoramic View dialog, and then you're able to actually upload that to the HomeView VR using the Upload button. In the Upload to HomeView VR dialog, you will need to sign in before you can upload your project. And to do so, you just click the Sign In button. The Sign In dialog will then enter your Cadsoft online community username and password, and then click Login. Note, if you have not registered, you can register for free by clicking on the Register button. That will then direct you to the online registration page. Once you're signed in, you will then need a name for your project, and you can start by clicking on the Browse button beside your project name, and you can give it an actual name. In the Project Manager dialog, you can enter the project name in the corresponding field, and then you can click OK. From there, you'll then be able to click the Upload button, and this will then upload it to the HomeView VR app. And once it's finished, you'll actually get an upload successful. Another note, if you have other CAN reviews saved that you want to add to this uploaded project, you can add them now or return later to do so. You would follow the same workflow listed, and then you would just add in your additional views using the same project name. And then the Envisioneer VR app will automatically connect them together. So you can have a maximum of 8 camera views per project and a maximum of 20 projects uploaded at any given time. Views will be ordered sequentially following the order of the upload, with the first upload being the first that will appear when you access a project. So what we're saying here is, if you have multiple rooms in your render and you're doing this to send to a client, you can render each view and upload them as long as they have the same project name. However you have ordered them when you've rendered them and uploaded them, that's how they will appear. And the client will then just be able to click Next, and they'll go from the living room to the kitchen, to the master bedroom, to a bedroom, to the exterior. Again, however you have uploaded them, however many renders you've created, up to 8, will then be available for your client to navigate through. And to give you an idea of what these look like when they're actually rendered, I'm just going to go up to our website, and here we have some VR views in that 360 environment that are already created. So here's the pool house that we were just looking at, and you can see that we've created an actual cube map that we can navigate around. And if we've created multiple views of this, so now if we move to the inside, when you're in the app, there will be a next button, and you can actually click on the next button, and it'll take you inside. And now you can navigate in the same way, but now on the inside. So again, this will be the interior of that pool house, and we can see the inside of that view. So again, it's a great way to show a client a space on their phone. So they would download the app onto their phones, and then you could send them the actual code, and they'll be able to open it up and view it on their system. So that covers everything I wanted to show you. So again, I'm going to open up the questions section. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type those in. I'm just going to go over a quick overview of what we've covered today. I'm going to close this down. So rendered images are a great way to market your design and make a lasting impression on prospective clients. To ensure a rendering success, it is important that you prepare your scene and define your rendering settings properly. Some points to remember. The most important factor in rendering is your lighting. The program takes into account your daylight as well as light coming from your light fixtures. Different light fixtures cast light in different manners. You can play with the lighting to ensure you use the right type of fixture and level of light. Materials have properties that determine how much the material reflects, absorbs, and emits light. Create a drawing specifically for your rendering purposes. When you are ready to render, use the Save As tool to create a copy of the drawing. Then eliminate any extra information in your copy drawing to reduce the rendering time and the file size. The higher the quality level in your rendering settings, the more photorealistic the renderings will be, but the longer they will take to render. And then always remember, for smoother lines, you want to set your anti-aliasing value to level 5 to help smooth out those lines. So again, I'm going to open up the questions section. And if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in, and I'll do my best to adjust the volume, or I'll answer those questions for you. One question I do get quite a bit is, for example, for pool, we added a surface for our pools. So right now you can see it's just an actual surface, and on that surface we just apply a material that's taking advantage of the rendering settings. So if I go to surface and I go right down to, I believe it's going to be right down the soffit, so I'll be using that water texture. And then within that water texture, we're adjusting how that material is being rendered. So when I look at the properties of that specific texture, we can see that we have it set so that it is somewhat transparent. It has a little bit of a shine to it. And then we could also adjust the reflection if we wanted to show a reflection in the water as well. Since we've created this to be kind of more of a rippled effect, we didn't really want to have a reflection in it because you wouldn't really see anything in that ripple anyways. So right now we just have a shininess applied to it and then a transparency set to it. And that's all it is. So now a question that's come in is, are previous projects able to be VR'd? Yes, you can open up a project that you've created in a previous version and open it up and look at it in the VR settings. That is not a problem. If you want to be navigating around in it, you will want to make sure that you have doors open. So if you want to walk through the front door to get into the house, make sure that you have the door option open. And to do that, all you have to do is select the door itself, and then under the properties of that door, it's just taking some time. Here we go. We can have the 3D open option. You want to set that to probably be about 50%. That way the door is open and you can walk through it. If your door is set to 3D and it's 0%, when you're in your 3D or in your VR or presentation mode, you will not be able to walk through that door, so you will not be able to get into your design. So again, this is important. Make sure this is set to be some kind of open distance. I would say 50% just makes it easier to walk through those openings. Again, I'll leave the question section open for a little bit longer. So again, now's the time to take advantage of our time together. If you do have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter them in, and I'll do my best to answer those for you. Just like with any other webinar that we do, I will be sending out an email at the conclusion of the class that has a PDF attached to it that goes through pretty much everything that we've covered today. So that way you have some documentation on what we've learned. And then this session has also been recorded, so if you ever need to go back and refer to it, you can check out the video recordings and see a recording of the rendering in VR presentation. So that looks like that is all the questions that have come in. Oh, we got one more coming in. When you enter a 2D image for background, can you scale it, or does that need to be done in a photo editor? You wouldn't need to scale it. The only thing you would probably need to do is in that view, so if I go into scene properties, you will need to create kind of like a spacer at the bottom of the image. So if I select the, I'm going to turn off physically accurate daylight. So we're now using our image again. And I'm going to try and find an image that actually shows what I'm referring to better. When I click on this, if we look at field with sparse trees. So basically the bottom third of this image is just a repeat of the little bit of the bottom of that image. What this essentially does is it pushes the bottom of your image up, because this is essentially where your terrain line will sit. So it pushes the image up, so the terrain line is a little bit higher. So if you're going to be using your own image, I would do an edit in a photo editor, and you can leave it like a white space down here or a dark space. We typically try and create a copy or a merge or a clone of the bottom of the image, so that way it's just not a black space, and then save it, and then you're actually able to bring it in, and that way when you're looking at it in your 3D view, and we come out to the back here, when the terrain hits it, you can see where the terrain stops, and if you were to come out, you can see how far and much down it goes. That's why we do that, is we just kind of bump it up so that way it sits a little bit higher when we're looking at our terrain. Again, that bottom third, just create a copy or a clone of that bottom portion so that it pushes your image up. So I'll leave that question section open again for just a couple more minutes. Again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in. If you happen to come up with a question after the class has ended, you can go ahead and send that into our support department, and they'll be able to help out with any questions you may have as well. And then I do also suggest our online community is a great place to get help as well. Our office hours for support are Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So if you have a question after hours, our online community has users all over the world that are able to help out as well. So when our office is closed, there are people still working on the program and taking advantage of the community in different parts of the world. So it's a great place to get help. All right, well, that seems to be all of the questions. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending. Oh, another question coming in. When I set north arrow, it seems to be off by 180 degrees. When I set my north arrow, it seems to be off by 180 degrees. I'm not sure I follow. You'd have to, the sun shines from the wrong side. And did you set up your location of where you are in the world? Okay, so I have my north arrow pointing exactly straight up. I'm just going to start a new drawing. I look at this in a 3D view, and so north is straight up, so I'm looking north right now. And I put this into a realistic view. And if I close this and I look at scene properties, I would have to see your file to fully understand where you're seeing a rotation of 180 degrees. Yeah, can you just send that file into support, Archie, and I will see if I can figure out where you're seeing this discrepancy in your north arrow. I think that'll be the best way for me to figure that out for you. Okay, so I will leave that question section open again for a couple of more minutes. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and enter those in. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I will be sending out a PDF following the class that covers everything that we've talked about today as well. All right, so that seems to be all the questions. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. And again, you can expect to see an email from me following the class. Again, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.